Hello! Two gunmen from the CJNG cartel pleaded desperately for their lives, but the police forces in Morelos, Mexico, showed no mercy. Both were quickly taken down on the spot, while in Tamaulipas 5 other cartel members met the same fate in an unyielding crackdown by authorities. It's time for these criminals to taste the ruthless force they once spread themselves. These are moments when the cartel faces the fierce power of the police. On February 7th, 2024, a shocking video went viral on social media, capturing the cold moment when Morelos State Police held down and shot two suspects despite their pleas. Cries of "enough" escaped the mouths of the suspects in despair, but the gunfire continued until everything fell silent. This video stormed through public discourse, leaving many in shock and sparking fiery debate. Earlier in 2023, the CJNG cartel, or Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generation, publicly declared their sovereignty over Morelos State. They aggressively announced their intent to cleanse areas controlled by other gangs, even threatening to kill officials if necessary to achieve their aims. Morelos has a ruler, and that's El Menco, CJNG boldly proclaimed in a threatening video, stirring further fear among the people. In the video, CJNG's emblem stood starkly next to the Mexican flag. A row of heavily armed, masked members dressed in combat uniforms lined up solemnly. Their goal was to eliminate groups that falsely posed under their name, taking advantage of El Mencho's reputation. Ironically, while CJNG declared it would protect the police from attacks by rival gangs, they still often clashed with those they claimed to call allies. On January 28th, 2024, two Morelos State Police officers encountered two CJNG members in a bloody gunfight right in the city. According to the State Security Commission, the clash stemmed from a shooting attack targeting a police unit, prompting an armed response. The suspects aimed at a police officer, but were ultimately taken down on the spot. A cinematic ending for those bold enough to challenge state authority. On February 18th, in the neighborhood of Lázaro Cardenas del Rio, in Querétaro, an intense pursuit aimed at capturing suspected gunmen unfolded rapidly. Their blue Cherokee SUV was chased down streets before confronting police at a repair shop. Footage of the chase ignited controversy as armed civilians were cornered and pleaded for their lives, yet police, apparently familiar with these insincere pleas, fired on. Images of the suspects' bodies circulated, showing them still clutching their weapons. Police claimed this proved they never truly surrendered despite their pleas for mercy. However, the Ministry of Security and other government agencies have remained silent, sparking public outrage and questions about the operation's legality. While investigations are underway, the public is largely showing support for the police's actions, seeing them as silent heroes willing to stand up to the CJNG cartel, offering a glimmer of peace on these violence-ridden streets. The violence in Querétaro has dragged on for years, forcing authorities to admit their inability to stop the reign of criminal gangs. On March 30th, 2022, a group of armed civilians suspected to be linked with the Gulf Cartel was traveling in a white Toyota truck along Miguel Alemán Boulevard in Tamaulipas, Mexico. Among them was a notorious female assassin named Mixi Padilla, also known as the Queen of Narcotics, and the girlfriend of Ivan Segura, alias El Tilín. Mixi frequently documented her life and posted it on TikTok, quickly becoming a popular influencer with videos featuring criminal activities and life within the Los Metros cartel. In a recent video, she confidently sang along to a Caliber 50 song, donned in a bulletproof vest embroidered with her gang's insignia, smiling smugly. But her joy was short-lived as a convoy from the Ministry of Defense suddenly arrived, turning the situation tense. A fierce battle between the military and the cartel erupted, transforming Miguel Alemán Boulevard into a brutal battlefield. Located near the U.S. border, this area has seen clashes that have become all too familiar to the people of Mexico. Local police, aware of their limitations in controlling cartel violence, called for military support. Soon after, gunfire erupted in a thunderous exchange between the two sides. Mixi, dressed in her personalized bulletproof vest, was ready to fight, but the vest was no match for the army's onslaught. The shootout claimed her life along with El Tilín, the group leader and his Gulf cartel, Los Metros bodyguards. The prosecutor's office later announced that the site would be handled by the Attorney General's office under the supervision of local authorities. Grisly images from the scene quickly leaked online, along with audio recordings capturing the gang members' final moments as they faced law enforcement. Among the victims was El Tylan, his blood-soaked body clad in tactical gear and adorned with cartel badges, symbolizing the victory of law enforcement. Photos showed the Toyota truck riddled with bullets, and in the background the desperate cries for help from El Tylan as he tried, but unsuccessfully, to call out their location to his comrades. The Gulf Cartel, infamous for its inclusion of female assassins, has become a symbol of rampant violence across media. Gang members frequently flaunt their arsenals, dressed in black with helmets, striking fear into the public. Yet after this clash, authorities have withheld information about the operation, leaving the public in suspense with many unanswered questions. This skirmish once again underscores the relentless conflicts between criminal groups as remnants of the Zetas and Gulf cartels continue to vie for territorial control. Tamaulipas is just one of countless fronts where criminal organizations battle for dominance through extortion and unrelenting violence. While both cartels face internal divisions and direct assaults like this one, but their influence remains undiminished, extending beyond Mexico's borders to neighboring countries like Colombia. At 2:36 p.m. on May 18, 2023, a black Ford pickup carrying 5 heavily armed men lost control and crashed hard into a concrete wall at a square in southern Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. Behind them, a convoy of military vehicles was in hot pursuit, heightening the tense atmosphere as if ready to explode. Immediately after the collision, an Army armored vehicle rammed into the Ford, creating a loud crash. Soldiers jumped out, surrounding and disarming the suspects in the vehicle, who were believed to be members of an unidentified criminal gang. Among the seized weapons was a Barrett 50 calories, a powerful rifle capable of taking down helicopters, confirming their connection to dangerous criminal organizations. Everything was captured by a nearby security camera, a seemingly insignificant detail that carried enormous power. As the soldiers executed orders on the spot, the grim reality of gang life and cartel brutality became unmistakably clear. After pulling the suspects out of the vehicle, they ordered them to lie on the ground, dragging them away from their weapons and tactical gear without mercy. A soldier who appeared to be the commander coldly instructed the suspects to lean against a wall. By 2:41 p.m., the military vehicle left, leaving behind a tense stillness. The commander continued communicating with his team, while another soldier stood guard behind the vehicle, eyes fixed on the road. Minutes later, the commander led some soldiers to another position, while others continued closely watching the suspects, with one even kicking them in what seemed like a release of pent-up anger. At 2:46 p.m., about 10 minutes after the crash, a soldier signaled toward nearby bushes. Instantly, everyone went on high alert, preparing for a possible ambush. Gunshots shattered the silence as the soldiers fired several rounds toward the bushes, while one soldier remained steadfast guarding the suspects. 2 minutes later, the armored vehicle returned. Suddenly, one of the soldiers opened fire on the suspects, followed by another soldier who discharged a few rounds from his handgun. The staged firefight went on for about 7 minutes, as if covering up the execution of the 5 suspects. By 2:55 p.m., one soldier placed a gun next to one of the bodies, his face expressionless. The security camera footage captured this grim moment as time seemed to freeze. At 3:53 p.m., medical personnel arrived, removing one wounded person from the scene, but the victim soon died en route to the hospital. The other 4 were already dead, concluding a life filled with crime, but also tragedy. After the medics left, the soldiers remained acting cautiously as though aware of the surveillance cameras. At 4:29 p.m., 3 soldiers approached one of the bodies, one of them holding a pair of handcuffs. By 6:20 p.m., experts from the Attorney General's office arrived, and a report from Infantry Lieutenant Jose Luis Martinez Nava recorded every detail captured by the camera, including that they had administered first aid to the person with a severe head injury. However, the report did not mention the gun placed beside one of the bodies or the removal of handcuffs from one of the victims. Everything became shrouded in ambiguity, and questions regarding the Army's actions remain unanswered. The brutality of the gangs, the harshness of life, and hidden mysteries, each is a dark piece of the violent puzzle in Mexico. Jim Shedd, a former DEA advisor, was interviewed by Mexican media via Univision, which exclusively broadcast the shocking video. He expressed his shock upon witnessing soldiers placing weapons beside the bodies of those arrested immediately after the shooting. The footage shows them using cloth or plastic to avoid leaving fingerprints, raising the haunting question: could this have been an extrajudicial execution carried out in cold blood in broad daylight, reflecting a severe lack of professionalism within the Mexican army? Every moment of this process was recorded by the camera, serving as irrefutable evidence. The Mexican Ministry of Defense immediately responded, affirming that it would not tolerate any misconduct by military personnel and pledging that no actions contrary to the law would be allowed. However, when questioned, the Attorney General's office remained silent, refraining from any further comment. Under Mexican law, any abuse by military personnel against civilians must be tried in civilian courts. This was clearly an execution, and it cannot be tolerated. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO, declared sternly at a daily press briefing. He asserted that those involved were in custody and would be handed over to the authorities. He also announced that the Ministry of Defense had proposed action concerning the crime of extrajudicial execution. The prosecutor's office will conduct a thorough investigation, and we are not covering up anything, as we do not tolerate human rights violations. However, discontent from the military rose following these statements. Lieutenant José Luis Martínez Nava, who led the military convoy that day, signed a report submitted to the Attorney General's office. According to his testimony, the military had been attacked by civilians while attempting to disarm the suspects. His tone seemed like that of someone trying to justify his actions. We were forced to respond when fired upon. Finally, he claimed that when the firefight ended, they found 4 of the 5 suspects dead, with 1 in critical condition. However, his account directly contradicted the footage captured on camera. Preliminary analysis and expert opinions from El País and Univision indicated no evidence that the soldiers were attacked first, completely refuting the official version that the suspects had fired first. Experts also emphasized that the weapon placements appeared deliberate, staging a false narrative of a firefight to legitimize a brutal execution. The Ministry of Defense pledged cooperation with the Attorney General's office to determine accountability. The military prosecutor's office swiftly launched an investigation after the video's leak, promising not to tolerate any misconduct by military personnel. In a resolute statement, the Ministry of Defense affirmed, "We are committed to the people of Mexico that all illegal actions will be punished." The incident has sent shockwaves, especially given that not long before, on February 26th, 2023, soldiers shot and killed 5 innocent youths sitting in their car in the same area. A report from the Mexican government's Human Rights Commission later indicated that these youths were unarmed and were simply spending the night at a club. While these cases remain shrouded in complexity and exceed the ideals of law enforcement, public support for strong measures against criminal gangs is undeniable. A significant question looms over what will happen next in this brutal conflict as notorious criminals continue to shake the country. Time will tell, with another astonishing story unfolding before us about those whom criminal gangs should never have crossed. In 2015, a Mexican man decided to launch his own fierce battle against drug traffickers. Like a character from a dramatic revenge film, he carried a small hammer with him at all times, a haunting interrogation tool. In a world filled with gang members, anyone who refused to disclose information about drug lords would endure relentless blows from his hammer. Details about this man remain vague, but this isn't an urban legend. It's the true story of a brave individual who operates in the shadows, determined to bring justice to streets plagued by crime. In his initial raids, people suspected he was a Mexican Marine who chose the difficult path to do what was right. His methods were simple yet effective: capture a drug dealer, deliver a few painful hammer blows, and humiliate them by forcing them to dress as women, stripping them of all dignity. Once he even applied lipstick on them, making them parade around like emasculated figures. He earned the nickname El Marino Loko, meaning the crazy Marine, and this name quickly spread. Eventually, his true identity was confirmed: Eric Morales Guevara, a former infantryman in the Mexican Navy. In Tamaulipas, he became known as Thor the Mad Marine, or the Lord of the Hammer. In 2015, he was assigned to Tamaulipas, a region controlled by Julian Manuel Lois Arenas, known as Toro, the leader of the Gulf Cartel, one of the most notorious and violent crime organizations of the time. The Lord of the Hammer soon gained fame as he publicly showcased his raids on social media, posting images of the Gulf Cartel gunmen and leaders he captured, forcing them to dress in women's clothing. In these photos, he held up the small hammer he used to interrogate them, forcing them to put on makeup and even kiss each other after being captured. In an interview with Grupo Imagen, a Mexican media outlet, Morales shared why he was committed to hunting down and humiliating the cartel gunmen. He explained that these individuals often harbored sexist attitudes, and the best way to break their spirits was to force them to feminize themselves, a sign of weakness and defeat in their eyes. One of the most remarkable events in Morales' life was when he rescued a former U.S. Navy serviceman who had been kidnapped in Reynosa, Mexico, an event that marked the beginning of his nickname Thor, or the Lord of the Hammer. On patrol one day, he found a small hammer in a woman's house. When he asked for it, she handed it to him and said, "Smash them to pieces." From that moment on, Morales was resolved to raid the homes of cartel bosses, destroying everything they owned. One of his most famous operations occurred when he infiltrated the home of Silvestre Haro Rodriguez, nicknamed El Chivo, a Gulf Cartel leader in Tampico. There he even took the urn containing the boss's father's ashes, a gesture that demonstrated not only bravery, but sent a clear message to those controlling the underworld. The fight led by the Lord of the Hammer wasn't just a battle against drugs, it was a crusade for honor and justice for innocent people. Each blow from his hammer not only inflicted pain on his enemies, but also brought hope to those who lived in fear. The criminal world may have trembled, but there stood a man ready to face evil with nothing but his hammer. Eric Morales Guevara, also known as the Lord of the Hammer, and the Mad Marine, continued his dramatic raids on the hideouts of top plaza bosses, including El Gringo. His relentless actions instilled not only fear, but also respect within the criminal world. For the gangs, Morales' ruthless tactics were tools that forced them to reveal the truth about their operations and associates. Each time he completed a mission, Morales filmed himself, sending a chilling message. "You all know my methods. You know how I work. If you cross me, the only outcome is a dead body. Let's begin the game." These bold proclamations were like sharp knives, piercing the hearts of criminals and making them tremble in fear. Currently, Morales' whereabouts remain an unsolved mystery. Many theories surround his fate. Some U.S. media sources suggest he may have been dismissed from the Navy due to involvement in corruption and illegal activities. Meanwhile, others speculate that Morales left the military voluntarily to pursue a personal mission. Still, some believe he continues his operations in secret, possibly even forming his own anti-crime group and quietly working in the shadows. Reports of drug dealers captured and dressed in women's clothing in the Michoacan region seem to support this theory, as the characteristics and interrogation methods bear the unmistakable mark of this former soldier. When Morales appeared, he didn't need to ask many questions. With just a cold, penetrating stare, criminals would voluntarily reveal all their secrets. Even the toughest criminals and local kingpins would become as meek as lambs. Morales often recalled the fiery hatred within him. No matter how many bribes, money, women, or other temptations were offered, he would simply say, "No." He would mark the messenger with a blow from his hammer, leaving behind a message: "Women, money, alcohol, or opiates don't satisfy me in the slightest. I want something else." Finally, the criminal gangs, unable to bear the presence of the Lord of the Hammer, placed a bounty of 5 million pesos, equivalent to around 280,000 U.S. dollars on his head. But in the eyes of the Mexican people, Morales remains a national hero, a symbol of relentless defiance against evil. Every step Morales takes resembles a never-ending battle, an endless journey between darkness and light, between crime and justice. When the Lord of the Hammer strikes, it isn't just the criminals who tremble. Society itself feels the strength of courage and the pursuit of justice.
On March 27, 2016, Miriam Rodriguez tightly gripped her loaded gun, her eyes fixed on the target, one of the 10 people who had kidnapped and murdered her daughter. Anger and burning hatred surged through her heart, for she knew that the decision she made in this breathless moment would change her life forever. Earlier, At 4 a.m. on January 24th, 2014, a fateful call shattered Miriam's quiet life. On the other end was her eldest daughter, Azalea, frantically reporting that Azalea Rodriguez, their 20-year-old daughter, had been kidnapped. At that time, Miriam was working as a nanny for a wealthy family in Malin, Texas. She immediately dropped everything. She quickly packed her bags, left a farewell letter, and rushed to the international bridge at Rosa to catch a bus to Tamaulipas, Mexico, where most of her family lived. Throughout the journey, Miriam felt like she was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. She had to confront the brutal truth that her daughter had fallen victim to the notorious Zetas gang, a cartel that not only spread fear, but also left a trail of death throughout the city of San Fernando. Since 2010, the Zetas had turned the place into a living hell. Government buildings lay in ruins, and everywhere one looked, anonymous corpses were discarded like soulless bodies, leaving no one trusting in their safety anymore. When Miriam reunited with her family, they received a call from the kidnappers. They demanded a ransom in exchange for Azalea's freedom, promising that she wouldn't be harmed if the money was delivered on time. Desperation and hope mingled in Miriam's heart. Her husband, Luis Rodriguez, rushed to the bank to gather the ransom. Thanks to his long-standing reputation, Luis was able to secure the money quickly, but their life savings amounted to less than $110,000. They arrived at the meeting point and handed the money to a Zetas gang member, but Azalea wasn't there. Instead, they were directed to a nearby cemetery parking lot. It all felt like a cruel joke as hours passed without any sign of Azalea. The ordeal didn't end there. The kidnappers continued to extort the family, claiming that Azalea was still alive. 2 days later, Miriam was approached by someone who claimed to be the leader of the Zetas named Sama. He demanded an additional $2,000 to ensure Azalea's safety. Although it was absurd and hard to believe, but Miriam had no other choice. She was forced to pay in desperation, clinging to the hope that this was the only way to save her daughter. Despite all her efforts, Azalea never returned, and from that moment, Miriam embarked on a bloody and tear-filled journey to track down those responsible for her daughter's murder. She swore, "I will make them pay." A month passed without any sign of her daughter, and Miriam realized that Azalea had been killed. That vow for revenge became her reason for living, sparking a relentless war against the Zetas cartel. In February 2014, Miriam called Lieutenant Alex, a naval officer whose number she had received from a stranger on a bus to San Fernando. In the conversation, Miriam quickly noticed a stark contrast between the Navy and the local police. The Navy acted swiftly, decisively, and mercilessly, showing no leniency towards their enemies with a kill ratio of 3-1, a frightening statistic as they killed more than they captured. This Navy unit had been the force responsible for capturing the infamous drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and for Miriam, catching a few Zetas members seemed like a small matter to them. Just a few days after the call, Miriam received her first lead. While walking through a square, she saw 2 young girls using Azalea's laptop, the one her daughter had with her when she was kidnapped. Miriam's heart raced. Without hesitation, she immediately reported it to Alex, and within less than an hour, both girls were arrested and taken to a secret location for interrogation. Under ruthless questioning, they revealed everything they knew about the laptop and their connections to the Zetas cartel. The interrogation results led to a raid on a Zetas prison camp, rescuing dozens of kidnapped hostages. However, amidst the crowd, Azalea was not there. Miriam personally participated in the raid, fearlessly charging into the crossfire. When the last of the gunfire finally subsided, she quietly ventured deeper into the camp, searching for any trace that could prove Azalea had once been there. In a dark, dusty room, Miriam found a scarf and a pillow that Azalea had used. She clenched them in her hands, filled with determination. As for the 2 girls using Azalea's laptop, we can never know what happened to them. And certainly, we can never know what the Navy did to the Zetas members captured in that raid. But one thing is certain. The ones who died were just a small fraction of the criminals responsible for Azalea's disappearance. They may have been eliminated, but they were crucial clues for Miriam to uncover the truth about her daughter's fate. Miriam didn't just want revenge, she wanted to know why Azalea had been kidnapped. Who was behind this cruel plan? Most importantly, where was Azalea? Was she still alive, or had she already been killed? On September 15th, 2014, Miriam's son, Luis Jr., was closing his shop in Ciudad Victoria to attend a festival. As he was locking up, one last customer walked in looking to buy a hat. But Luis froze in his tracks because that person was none other than Sama, the one who had extorted his family, demanding an extra $2,000 in exchange for Azalea's life. You might be wondering how Luis recognized him, right? It was because a few months earlier, Miriam had met a mechanic who had repaired Azalea's car on the night she was kidnapped. This mechanic had also been kidnapped by the Zetas, but was lucky to survive. Miriam tracked him down until he agreed to tell her what he had witnessed, and the most important thing he said was the name Sama. Sama wasn't just a ruthless leader. Miriam believed he was the one who had directly ordered her daughter's abduction. But Miriam needed his true identity for the police to issue a warrant. For weeks, she paid cartel members to follow leads, but nothing bore any fruit. It wasn't until Miriam found a blurry photo on Facebook. In the picture, Sama stood next to a woman in a uniform from a local ice cream chain in San Fernando. With just that one photo, Miriam decided to follow that woman to track down Sama's whereabouts. After weeks of staking out various shops, Miriam finally found her. Then, after many weeks of waiting, Sama appeared. Miriam didn't miss the opportunity and began tailing him. She put on her old medical uniform, pretending to be a survey worker, going door to door in Sama's neighborhood. She needed more information, and her bold plan succeeded as she gathered the necessary details. Sama's fate was now only a matter of time. After collecting enough evidence on Sama, Miriam quickly sent all the information to authorities in the capital, hoping that justice would finally be served. But like a never-ending nightmare, everything fell into silence once again. A week passed without any action, and unable to wait any longer. Miriam began making constant phone calls, urging officials to act, demanding that an arrest warrant be issued. When even the calls were in vain, she wrote an official letter with harsh words, pressuring the investigators to take action. But when they went to check, Sama had vanished like a ghost. He slipped away right in front of their eyes. However, Sama didn't know that Miriam had a backup plan. She had spent weeks tracking him through his Facebook page, piecing together every small detail and face connected to him and the Zetas cartel. She had mapped out the entire network of those involved in Azalea's kidnapping. The evidence in her hands was complete, detailed, and undeniable, but the issue remained that no one in authority wanted to confront the Zetas cartel. With no one to rely on, Miriam decided to take matters into her own hands. Ciudad Victoria wasn't too big with a population of only around 350,000. If Sama was still there, he wouldn't be able to hide forever. She shared his picture with all her relatives, and then, on a fateful day, her son, Luis Jr., called and said, "Mom, I found him." Miriam's heart clenched as this was the moment she had been waiting for so long. Without a second of hesitation, she immediately called a trusted police officer, and within hours, Sama was arrested. She watched as he was handcuffed, feeling both relief and hatred. She thought this would be the end, but it turned out to be only the beginning of the nightmare. Under the brutal interrogation by federal police, Sama finally confessed to everything. He coldly detailed how they had killed Azalea. His words pierced Miriam's heart like daggers. Azalea was dead, and her death was more horrific than any nightmare Miriam had ever imagined. With that confession, Miriam found a new goal: to take revenge on everyone involved in her daughter's death. Sama named several more people, including Christian Jose Zapata Gonzalez, who was only 18 years old. Though young, but he couldn't escape justice either. Gonzalez was later arrested, bringing the total to 8 out of the 10 people Sama had named. 6 had already been killed in previous raids, leaving only 2 more. On March 27, 2016, Miriam hid in the shadows near the Matamoros International Bridge, the border between Mexico and Brownsville, Texas. She wore a baseball cap, a long coat, and tightly gripped a loaded .38 revolver. When the florist, one of those involved, appeared, Miriam didn't hesitate. She drew her gun, aimed it directly at him, and held him at gunpoint until the police arrived. She had captured the 9th person on her list. Now, only one remained. Some were dead, some imprisoned, but Miriam wasn't done. Enrique Joel Rubio Flores, the 10th person, had left San Fernando and started a new life as a pastor in Aldama. However, his past couldn't be forgotten. Through his grandfather, Miriam traced Flores' whereabouts, leading a few Mexican police officers to Aldama, and finally, he was arrested. By that time, Miriam had founded a support group for parents with missing children called the Colectivo de Desaparecidos de San Fernando, a small but growing collective. Despite receiving many death threats from the cartel and those she had put behind bars, Miriam never wavered. Friends said she had gone too far, but for Miriam, she had poured her heart and soul into this fight. She couldn't stop until they had all paid. Yet, she couldn't escape the lurking danger. Nearly 24 prisoners, including those responsible for her daughter's murder, had escaped from Ciudad Victoria prison. Miriam knew the Zetas wouldn't leave her alone, so she pleaded with the government for protection, but before the bodyguards could arrive, they found her. Miriam's story didn't just end as a journey of revenge, but as a life-and-death confrontation with a notorious cartel. On May 10, 2017, an oppressive atmosphere hung over Ciudad Victoria as Miriam left her shop, driving herself home. A month earlier, a serious accident had occurred, and she still had to walk with crutches. She had broken her leg during a dramatic chase after one last target on her list. That target was a young woman believed to have left town to work as a nanny for a family in Ciudad Victoria, a person directly connected to Azalea's kidnapping. The image of Azalea in her moments of agony being tortured constantly haunted Miriam's mind. Miriam didn't have official documentation, but the information she gathered indicated that this woman had treated Azalea like a punching bag. With her determined nature, Miriam couldn't allow such a person to live peacefully. She spent days sitting in her car, waiting for the right moment. She sat in the dark with only the sound of the radio and bottles of urine beside her, reminding herself that every sacrifice was worth it to find justice. Finally, when the police arrested the woman, a wave of excitement surged in Miriam's heart, but as she rushed forward, she stumbled and the sound of breaking bones echoed through the quiet night. Though her leg was still bandaged, but she was determined to make it back home. Barely catching her breath, a white Nissan truck parked right behind her. The air grew thick with the sense of violence. Despite her injury, Miriam struggled to pull the gun from her handbag, but the Zetas gunmen gave her no chance. They opened fire, 13 shots rang out with 8 bullets hitting her body. The sharp sounds of gunfire echoed like a death sentence. Inside the house, her husband was watching TV when he was startled by the shots. He rushed outside to witness the tragic scene. Miriam lay in a pool of blood, her hand still gripping the gun. A battle had ended, but was her death truly the end? Miriam was rushed to the hospital, where doctors delivered the grim news. She had passed away. It seemed like her story had come to a close, but the fire in her son Luis Jr.'s heart had just been ignited. He vowed to take over the support group his mother had painstakingly built. With unyielding spirit, he was ready to continue the fight against evil, even though violence in Mexico and Tamaulipas was escalating, leaving everyone living in fear. Miriam's death was a wake-up call, a reminder that none of us are truly safe. On June 7, 2020, the country was shaken when 117 murders were recorded in just 24 hours, a shocking figure that alarmed everyone. This time, the perpetrators weren't the Zetas cartel, but CJNG, a new and even more terrifying criminal organization spreading violence everywhere. Perhaps if the government had provided Miriam with proper protection, she could have survived. If her leg hadn't been broken, maybe she could have escaped the attack. But no matter what, the name Miriam Rodriguez will forever be remembered as a symbol of courage. She was a woman who dared to stand up against a notorious cartel, a silent hero of the Mexican people. Her story will live on, inspiring hope and determination in the hearts of those who still stand strong against violence. What do you think of this story? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below for everyone to see. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.